Hey everyone, and welcome to a deep dive. We're going to be looking at something pretty awesome today.
Awesome and educational.
You know it. We're talking open source physics simulations and how they're being used in education.
Particularly in Singapore.
Yeah.
Singapore.
They're really leading the way in this area.
Totally. These simulations are changing how students learn physics.
It's incredible to see the impact they're having.
I was reading about this physics educator in Singapore named Lokang. This guy has customized over 75 of these simulations to match their national curriculum.
Wow, 75, that's a lot.
Yeah, 75. That's some serious dedication.
He's obviously very passionate about this.
Yeah. But before we dive into what Lokang did, can you give us like a quick explainer on what open source physics even means?
Sure.
I get the physics part.
Yeah.
But open source makes it sound like, free-floating equations in cyberspace.
Not quite. Open source just means the code behind the software is freely available
Okay.
for anyone to use, modify, and share.
Think of it like a recipe that anyone can tweak and pass along.
Oh, I like that analogy.
In this case, it's recipes for simulating physics phenomena.
Okay, so things you'd normally see in a lab.
Exactly, but now on your computer,
Cool.
ready to be explored and tinkered with.
So it's not just watching a pre-recorded demo.
Nope.
You can actually play around with the variables and see what happens.
Exactly. You got it. And because these models are shared under licenses like Creative Commons Attribution or GNU General Public License,
Okay.
it opens up a ton of possibilities for educators.
Right.
Like looking. These licenses basically mean you're free to use and adapt them however you see fit.
So he took existing open source models and tailored them.
He did. He tailored them to fit the primary, secondary, and even A-level physics syllabus in Singapore.
That's incredible. Imagine having a library of virtual experiments at your fingertips,
Right.
all aligned with what you're learning in class.
Hmm.
This could be a game changer,
Right.
especially for students who might not have access to fancy lab equipment.
Absolutely. It makes high-quality physics education much more accessible.
Do you have any favorite examples of the simulations looking customized?
Oh, there's so many cool ones. Take the pendulum model, for instance.
Okay.
The original was created by Wolfgang Christian and Effa Scumber.
Okay.
It was pretty complex, but Looking streamlined it for primary school students, made it more interactive and age-appropriate.
I bet that's way more engaging than just reading about pendulums in a textbook.
Oh, for sure.
What other models stood out to you?
Well, there's the stopwatch model.
A stopwatch.
Yeah. Sounds pretty basic, right?
Yeah.
But Looking took the original by Dastagear and Fuquan Huang
Mm.
and made it seriously clever. He added these magnified integer values for a game-like learning experience
Oh, wow.
and made the minute and second hands super clear so younger kids can easily grasp the concept of time.
That's so smart.
Yeah.
Even something as simple as a stopwatch can become a powerful learning tool with the right tweaks.
You got it.
And it sounds like these simulations cover a wide range of physics topics, right?
Oh, absolutely, like a virtual physics playground. Looking has models for everything, from basic mechanics to more complex concepts like thermodynamics and wave behavior. He even adapted a simulation for Brownian motion,
Oh, wow.
which lets students visualize the random movement of particles, something that's pretty much impossible to see with the naked eye.
I remember struggling with that concept back in school.
Mm.
Being able to actually see it in action would have been mind-blowing. So, aside from the ones we've talked about, what other kinds of physics adventures can students have with these simulations?
Well, they can play around with simulations for magnets falling through solenoids, which helps them understand electromagnetism.
Okay.
There are collision carts for exploring momentum, a ripple tank to visualize wave behavior,
Yeah.
even simulations for direct current electric motors and geostationary satellites.
Wait, there's a simulation for geostationary satellites?
There is.
That's incredible. I wish I had these tools when I was in school. And it's not just the theoretical stuff, right? There are also simulations for practical tools like vernier calipers and micrometers.
You got it. It's about giving students a well-rounded understanding of physics. From the abstract concepts to the tools we use to measure and understand the physical world. And it's all thanks to the open source nature of these simulations that someone like Looking could take these existing resources and customize them to perfectly suit the needs of his students. That's the beauty of open source. It's not just about free access to information.
Right.
It's about empowering people to take that information and shape it into something even better, something perfectly tailored to their specific needs.
I love that. It's like a global physics community,
Yeah.
constantly building and improving upon each other's work. And speaking of communities, this whole thing reminds reminds me of something we hear more and more about these days, open educational resources, or OER.
You're right. These physics simulations are just one amazing example of the wider OER movement.
Legit.
OER is all about making high-quality educational materials freely accessible to everyone, regardless of their location or socioeconomic background.
It's about democratizing knowledge,
Right.
right?
Exactly.
Ensuring that everyone has the opportunity to learn and grow, even if they can't afford expensive textbooks or access to fancy schools.
Precisely. It's a movement that's gaining momentum worldwide, and it's fueled by the same spirit of collaboration and sharing that drives the open source community.
And to think, this incredible movement has roots in something as seemingly simple as sharing physics simulations online. It really shows the power of sharing, doesn't it? I'm curious, what are some of the specific benefits you see these simulations having on both students and teachers?
Well, from a student's perspective, I think the biggest advantage is that it makes learning interactive and engaging.
Okay.
Instead of passively reading about physics in a textbook,
Right.
they can actually manipulate variables, run experiments, and see the results in real time.
Yeah.
This kind of hands-on learning helps them grasp the concepts much more effectively.
Right. It's like turning physics into a game, which I bet makes a huge difference, especially for those who find traditional learning methods a bit dry.
Exactly. And for teachers, these simulations are a fantastic tool for creating dynamic and engaging lesson plans. They can even customize the simulations to fit their specific teaching style and the needs of their students.
It sounds like a win-win for everyone involved. Students get to learn in a fun and engaging way, teachers have access to a powerful new toolkit, and the spirit of collaboration and knowledge sharing is fostered throughout the educational system. But before we go too far down that road, I'm curious to hear your thoughts on the research side of things. Does the data actually support the idea that these simulations are effective learning tools?
Absolutely. There have been quite a few studies that demonstrate the positive impact of simulations on student learning. For instance, one study found that students who used simulations to learn about projectile motion scored significantly higher on tests than those who learned through traditional methods.
That's amazing. So it's not just anecdotal evidence. There's actual scientific data backing up the claim that these simulations are making a real difference.
Exactly. It's not just about scores on tests either.
Yeah.
It's about deeper understanding, critical thinking, and problem-solving skills.
This has been so insightful. We've covered a lot of ground in a short time, from the basics of open source physics to its real-world applications in Singapore and beyond. I think it's time to shift gears a bit and delve into the bigger picture. What does the future hold for this movement? Do you see open source simulations becoming the norm in classrooms around the world?
Well, it's hard to predict the future with certainty, but I do believe we're on the cusp of a major shift in education. The accessibility and affordability of open source resources have the potential to level the playing field, giving students everywhere access to high-quality learning materials.
It's a powerful vision, one that I'm excited to see unfold. But for now, let's take a quick pause and gather our thoughts. When we come back, I'd love to explore some specific examples of how Looking's simulations are being used in the classroom and what kind of impact they're having on students. Stay tuned. Welcome back. Before the break, we were talking about all of the awesome open source physics simulations that are being used in Singapore thanks to people like Looking.
He's quite the innovator.
He really is, so I'm super curious to hear more about how he's actually using these simulations in the classroom. What's that like in practice?
It's amazing he weaves these simulations right into the lessons.
Oh, wow.
For example, at Yishun Junior College, he used the ripple tank model
Okay.
to demonstrate wave behavior.
Makes sense.
But get this, instead of just watching waves ripple in a real tank, students can use the simulation to change the frequency, amplitude, even create obstacles.
Oh.
And then they can see how the waves diffract and interfere.
Oh, that's so cool. So it's not just like a replacement for a physical experiment.
Right.
It's a way to take it to the next level.
Exactly.
They can explore things that would be difficult or impossible to do in a real lab setting.
Absolutely. It unlocks a whole new world of experimentation and discovery.
I love that.
Another cool example is how he adapted the roller coaster simulation.
Oh, that one sounds fun.
I bet the students loved it. He used it to teach the concept of energy conservation.
Oh, very clever.
Yeah, they could design their own roller coaster tracks and manipulate the height and shape of the hills.
Oh, that's awesome.
And then see how the speed and energy of the coaster changed throughout the ride.
That is brilliant. That's a way to make a potentially boring topic come alive.
Totally.
I can just imagine Students being so engrossed in designing their own coasters and seeing the physics in action. It takes learning beyond just memorizing formulas.
For sure.
Makes it something they can really connect with.
Exactly. That's what is so exciting about these simulations. They help students develop a much deeper understanding of physics, a more intuitive understanding,
Right.
by allowing them to experiment and visualize these concepts in a way that traditional methods just can't.
Yeah, it's funny because when I was in school, physics often felt very abstract and theoretical.
Yeah.
But with these simulations, it feels like something you can really get your hands on and explore.
Yeah.
Do you think that this approach could help bridge the gap for students who maybe struggle with more traditional learning methods?
I think so, absolutely. Simulations cater to different learning styles. For visual learners, being able to see these concepts in action is invaluable. And for kinesthetic learners, those who learn by doing, the interactive nature of the simulations allows them to learn in a way that makes sense to them.
It's almost like leveling the playing field, giving everyone an opportunity to engage with the material in a way that works for them. That's a really powerful idea.
It is. And remember, we're just scratching the surface here. Looking has customized over 75 simulations.
That's insane.
I know, right? There's a whole world of physics waiting to be explored. He even has simulations that cover much more advanced topics, like Kepler's third law and geostationary satellites.
That's so
Cool,
cool.
cool.
It's mind-blowing to think about the range of topics these simulations can cover. And it's not just limited to physics either. We touched on this earlier, but this whole idea of open educational resources, it has the potential to transform learning across all subjects.
Oh, absolutely.
Imagine if we had open source simulations for history, literature, music.
Yeah.
Students could interact with historical events, explore the nuances of a literary masterpiece, or even compose their own music using interactive tools.
I love it.
The possibilities are just, it makes me so optimistic about the future of education.
Me too. This movement towards open education represents such a fundamental shift in how we think about learning and access to knowledge.
It really is inspiring to think about. But before we get carried away with all of the possibilities,
Yeah.
let's bring it back to the here and now for a second. We've talked about all the benefits of simulations and how they can be used. But I'm curious about the practical side of things.
Yeah.
Are there any challenges or limitations to using these tools in the classroom?
That's a great question. And while these simulations offer all these amazing learning opportunities, it is important to acknowledge that they're not like a magic bullet.
Sure.
One potential challenge is making sure that students have access to the necessary technology.
Right.
Not all schools have computers or tablets readily available for every student, and internet access can also be a barrier in some areas.
Absolutely. You bring up a really important point. It kind of highlights the importance of addressing the digital divide, right?
Yeah.
And ensuring that all students have equitable access to technology and resources.
100%. That's something educators and policymakers need to keep in mind as we move towards more technology-driven learning environments.
For sure. Are there any other challenges that you've come across?
Well, another thing to consider is the role of the teacher.
Okay.
Simulations are obviously powerful tools,
Right.
but they're most effective when they're used together with skilled instruction.
So it's not just about throwing technology at the problem.
Right.
It's about integrating it thoughtfully and strategically into the learning process.
Exactly. The teacher's role is more important than ever in this new educational landscape. They are the facilitators, mentors, guides, helping students navigate this exciting world of digital learning.
It sounds like there's a delicate balance to strike
Yeah.
between harnessing the power of technology and maintaining the human element in education.
I think you're absolutely right. We need to find ways to use technology to really enhance and enrich the learning experience, not replace the value of a teacher.
This has been such a fascinating conversation. We've explored the power of these open source physics simulations, witnessed how they're being used to transform classrooms in Singapore, and even peeked into the future of education. But there's one crucial element we haven't talked to yet. You, the listener.
Oh, right.
Why should you care about all of this? Even if you're not a student or a teacher.
It's easy to get caught up in the technical details and kind of miss the bigger picture. But at its core, this movement is about something so much bigger than physics or simulations. It's about the power of open knowledge, the democratization of learning, the belief that everybody should have the opportunity to explore and understand the world around them.
I love that. That was beautifully put. It's a great reminder that learning isn't just confined to classrooms or textbooks. It's a lifelong journey, a journey of discovery that we can all embark on, regardless of our backgrounds or professions. And these open source tools give us the power to take that journey into our own hands.
That's right. And as we're wrapping up this deep dive,
Okay,
I want to leave our listener with a little thought-provoking question to ponder.
I like it. Hit me.
We've seen the incredible impact of these simulations on physics education. But what other subjects could benefit from this approach?
That's a great question. I mean, we've already touched on the possibilities in history, literature, and music, but I'm sure our listeners could come up with some even more creative applications. What about economics, psychology, or even philosophy?
Mm.
Imagine being able to engage with those kind of complex concepts,
Right.
exploring different perspectives through these interactive simulations.
The possibilities are truly limitless. It's so exciting to think about how this movement might evolve and what kind of impact it could have on generations to come. So, as we conclude our deep dive,
Okay.
I encourage you, the listener, to explore Looking's blog, maybe check out some of the other resources that we've mentioned, see these simulations in action, and let your imagination run wild with all of the possibilities that open education has to offer.
That's the perfect note to end on. Thanks for joining us on this journey today, everyone. Keep learning, keep exploring, and remember, the future of education is bright, and it's in all of our hands to shape it. Until next time. It's amazing, isn't it? Just how much these open source physics simulations are changing how we learn.
It really is. It just shows you what can happen when people work together.
I know, right? Like
Yep.
all
That's
this
right.
innovation and collaboration just because people want to share knowledge.
And it starts with people like looking at,
Yeah.
taking these open source tools and making them even better. But the impact goes way beyond the classroom, too. We've talked about students and teachers.
Right.
But what does this all mean for society in general, this whole shift towards open education?
That is a good question. What does it mean for the future of learning and sharing knowledge?
Imagine if everyone had access to high quality education. No matter where they lived or how much money they had or what school they went to, anyone could learn anything.
That would be incredible. It's like knowledge would be for everyone.
Exactly. It would be a right, not a privilege.
Yeah.
And these open source tools are making that happen.
Like those physics simulations.
Yeah. They're showing us what we can do when we work together and share information.
I love it. So do you think these simulations will become the norm? Not just for physics, but for every subject?
It could definitely happen. I mean, as more teachers use these tools and share their own version,
We'll have open educational resources for everything.
right, for all kinds of subjects and learning styles.
We could have virtual labs for biology, interactive timelines for history, even simulations that let you experience literature firsthand.
It's pretty amazing when you think about it.
It really makes you wonder what the world could be like if we embraced this whole open knowledge thing, if we really committed to it.
I agree. There will be some bumps along the way, I'm sure.
Like what?
Making sure everyone has access to the technology, for one, and making sure the resources are good quality.
Right.
But I think it's worth it. The benefits are huge.
And it's thanks to people like Looking that we're even having this conversation. Their dedication to sharing knowledge is so important.
Couldn't agree more.
Mm.
But as we wrap up this deep dive, I want to leave our listeners with one last thought. We've seen how open source physics simulations are changing physics education. But this is about so much more than just science. It's about a whole new way of thinking about education. It's about fairness and access, about making sure everyone has a chance to learn and grow.
It really is. It's been awesome exploring this with you. Thanks for joining us, everyone. Keep learning, keep exploring, and remember, the future of education is in our hands.